It's been crickets. It's been crickets. Amber, are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay, Amber? Where's Amber Cox? Amber Cox was called out, and she's being exposed once again for having no interest in celebrating Caitlin Clark's greatness. Once again, Amber Cox is MIA under a rock somewhere. Not celebrate. She had nothing to say about Caitlin Clark's 45-point double-double, the first time in WNBA history it's been done.
Remarkably, for the very first time in WNBA history, a player recorded a 45-point double-double. Yet the Indiana Fever's general manager, whose professional responsibility is to promote the franchise's competitive success and commercial achievements, remained completely silent. She made no post, offered no public recognition, and gave no celebration at all, despite clearly staying active on the very same social media platforms and enthusiastically acknowledging everyone else.
Amber Cox, you've been awfully quiet about Caitlin Clark's historic feat. You was real loud about everything else going on. Caitlin come back, you get real quiet. It's real silent on that account, Amber. It's real silent.
Behind that silence, the real story soon began to emerge. It was never an accident, a packed schedule, or a forgotten notification. According to sources within the Indiana Fever organization, Amber Cox reportedly gave a directive instructing players not to celebrate Caitlin Clark's historic performance. When Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham learned about it, they reportedly walked straight up to Amber Cox inside the building and refused to shake her hand in front of the entire organization, leaving her publicly embarrassed in a way she had never experienced during her professional career. Here's the full story. To truly understand the significance of what Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham did by refusing that handshake, you first have to look at the unforgettable performance Amber Cox allegedly tried to push aside. Clark delivered 45 points and a double-double, becoming the first player in the entire history of the Women's National Basketball Association to record that exact statistical combination in a single game. It wasn't just the first time this season or even in recent years. It was the first occurrence in a league that has existed for nearly 3 decades and has featured Hall of Fame players whose achievements shaped the sport's legacy. This wasn't the type of milestone meant to disappear into the record books. It was the kind of historic performance that captured the basketball world's attention, inspired league-wide headlines, prompted every major sports outlet to showcase detailed graphics, and highlighted exactly what had been accomplished and why it had never happened before. A performance of this magnitude is exactly the kind of achievement that any general manager in any professional sports league would normally celebrate with confidence, enthusiasm, and without hesitation. Recognizing a moment like this is not only the right thing to do, but also the professionally responsible, commercially smart, and institutionally expected response from anyone whose role depends on the continued success of the player who just made history. Yet Amber Cox reportedly did none of that. While Kelsey Mitchell's milestones were highlighted, team victories that did not prominently feature Clark received attention, and regular franchise content continued to be promoted. The historic 45-point double-double, the first of its kind in WNBA history, was met with organizational silence from the general manager of the very franchise where it happened. According to the claims, a directive was then issued telling players not to celebrate, not to post, and not to create the kind of public excitement that naturally follows a teammate's historic achievement. Amber Cox allegedly used her position within the organization to discourage the genuine celebration of what was presented as the most historically significant individual performance in WNBA history. When Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham reportedly learned about it, the customary handshake that typically symbolizes mutual respect between a player and her general manager, the simple personal and professional acknowledgement expected in that setting, never took place. Rather than offering the customary greeting, Clark and Cunningham reportedly walked past Amber Cox without extending a handshake or saying a word, sending a message that echoed through the entire building more powerfully than any press release, social media post, or public statement ever could. Professional athletes understand the meaning behind silent actions. They know what it signals when a teammate chooses not to make the obvious pass, when a coach avoids eye contact during a film session, or when the front office never responds to a message. Everyone inside the Indiana Fever organization reportedly understood the significance when Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham declined to shake Amber Cox's hand. It was presented not as an accident, distraction, or oversight, but as a deliberate, intentional act of professional distance carried out in full view of those around them, where its meaning was impossible to misunderstand. Refusing a handshake within a professional sports organization is often viewed as one of the strongest statements a player can make without speaking. It can express what no press conference or public comment ever could. I know what happened. I know the directive that was given. I know my historic achievement was allegedly discouraged from being celebrated, and I'm not going to act as though that decision was acceptable or easily forgotten. Two players standing before their general manager and withholding the basic professional courtesy routinely extended to everyone else in the building was portrayed not as simple drama, but as a powerful statement of where they stood.
Amber Cox said, "Nonsense. You know who is also happy after any win? Caitlin Clark, because this team is full of people who celebrate and care for one another. And like all of them, she's a great teammate. We all cannot wait to have Cece back on the court. Enough with this ridiculous narrative."
Amber Cox publicly pushed back against the criticism, calling the entire controversy a ridiculous narrative. That was the image she presented when fans questioned the pattern of selective silence surrounding Caitlin Clark's accomplishments. She maintained that the team celebrated one another authentically and dismissed the concerns as something created by overly passionate fans. Yet, according to the claims, she later issued a private directive that directly conflicted with those public statements. The difference between what was said publicly and what was allegedly instructed behind the scenes was presented not as a small inconsistency, but as the kind of contradiction capable of damaging institutional credibility. When Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham reportedly stood before Amber Cox without offering a handshake, the moment was portrayed as a clear signal that they had connected those events. Their refusal was described as more than a personal slight. It allegedly sent a message throughout the Indiana Fever organization, from players and coaches to staff and ownership, about where the internal power dynamic truly stood and how two of the franchise's most commercially valuable players were willing to respond when they believed that authority had been misused. Everyone in the locker room reportedly witnessed the exchange. Every coach and staff member processed its significance, and those present understood they were watching a moment that could shape the organization's culture for the rest of the season and into the offseason. Players who were allegedly instructed not to celebrate Clark's historic achievement and who followed that directive out of professional caution then watched two teammates decline the customary handshake with the person said to have issued it. According to this account, that moment gave them something the directive had attempted to remove: permission to privately recognize what they believed was wrong, and to see that two players were willing to take that stand on behalf of others who lacked the platform or security to do so.
Criticism in life is the cost of praise. By nature of individuals praising you, by nature of individuals putting you on a pedestal, others are going to try to rip the pegs out from that pedestal, and others are going to criticize you if for no other reason than they despise seeing you get praised.
According to this account, the alleged behavior reflected more than simple disagreement. It was presented as an effort to limit the recognition Caitlin Clark received for her historic accomplishment. The claim argues that the reported directive to discourage celebration of Clark's record was never about team unity, managing egos, or maintaining competitive focus. Instead, it was described as an attempt to prevent one player's unprecedented achievement, the first of its kind in WNBA history, from receiving the level of praise many believed it deserved. In that context, the reported handshake refusal by Clark and Sophie Cunningham was portrayed as a public response to those events. The message, as described, was clear: we saw what happened. We understand what it meant, and we're not going to pretend everything is normal. The narrative presents that moment not as unnecessary drama, but as an act of accountability expressed without words by two professional athletes. From this perspective, Amber Cox's reported public embarrassment was framed not as the result of a misunderstanding or poor communication, but as the foreseeable outcome of what was described as an ongoing pattern throughout Caitlin Clark's time with the Indiana Fever. That pattern included the publicly discussed social media activity, the selective celebration of other players while Clark's achievements allegedly received little acknowledgement, the dismissal of fan concerns as exaggerated narratives, the reported directive discouraging celebrations, and finally the alleged handshake refusal, the moment this account says turned a private dispute into a visible public statement.
Why are you randomly going to your request in Instagram DMs and like you was looking for something to try to paint a picture about Caitlin Clark fans? That's what you was doing, because you didn't do it a week before that. You didn't do it the week before that. You didn't do it the week before that. Like, you only waited to go sift through your requests, because on photos there's comments from a bunch of other people after other games. You tried to paint a picture on Caitlin Clark and her fans. It's disgusting.
The reaction has been intense because, according to this account, it reflects the seriousness of the alleged actions by Amber Cox. The criticism is not simply about remaining quiet after a historic performance. The claim suggests she used her institutional position to discourage others from celebrating it as well, while later dismissing concerns about that silence as a ridiculous narrative. The handshake refusal was portrayed as the direct consequence of those choices, with two of the franchise's most important figures, the most commercially valuable player in team history and one of its most respected teammates, choosing not to offer a basic professional courtesy. It was a moment that no press release or carefully crafted statement could easily repair. Now, Indiana Fever ownership faces a difficult decision because the handshake incident, while powerful as an internal message, is described as a visible sign of a deeper organizational issue that has developed over multiple seasons and is now noticeable both inside and outside the building. The central question is whether Amber Cox still holds the authority needed to lead a franchise when two key players have publicly chosen not to extend that basic professional respect. Institutional power is not only about having a title. It depends on whether the people affected by those decisions believe that authority is legitimate. The handshake refusal was presented as a clear statement that two of the franchise's most influential players no longer view those decisions as acceptable after what was allegedly done. The situation involving the LA Sparks has now become more relevant than ever. The contrast being highlighted between organizations could not appear more different. Lynn Roberts has publicly shown support for every player within her organization, while Sophie Cunningham, who reportedly refused to shake the Indiana Fever general manager's hand, is set to become a free agent after this season. The situation being described in Los Angeles represents a completely different environment from the concerns being raised in Indianapolis. Indiana Fever ownership now faces a difficult choice between Amber Cox and Caitlin Clark, the general manager who was accused of directing the suppression of a historic celebration and the player who transformed the franchise's value while making a powerful public statement that she would not quietly accept what she viewed as institutional betrayal. The decision may seem obvious, but the organization's past choices suggest it may not happen quickly. Every additional day creates another moment where Caitlin Clark must consider what it means to represent a franchise where she believes her greatest achievement was not fully embraced inside her own workplace. The handshake situation involving Caitlin Clark, Sophie Cunningham, and Amber Cox has become bigger than just an Indiana Fever controversy. It has become a broader WNBA discussion because it represents a moment when concerns surrounding the league's biggest star became visible in the most personal and undeniable way. Two professional athletes stood before their general manager and made a deliberate public choice in front of their entire organization, showing that there are limits to what they are willing to accept. There are boundaries to the institutional disrespect they will tolerate while continuing to perform at the highest level for the team they represent, and this moment showed those boundaries had finally been reached.
Amber, are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay, Amber? Amber, we still waiting on you to congratulate Caitlin Clark publicly. We still waiting.
The wait continues, and Caitlin Clark is still waiting as well. Not for another social media post or a simple retweet, but for the basic institutional acknowledgement that what allegedly happened, the directive, the silence, and the suppression of celebrating a historic achievement inside her own building, was wrong, and that those responsible will be held accountable. That acknowledgement has yet to arrive. Until it does, and until Indiana Fever ownership addresses the situation with the seriousness it demands, the handshake refusal remains the strongest possible statement about the current relationship between this franchise and the player who helped make it matter. The record remains unchanged, 45 points and a double-double, the first achievement of its kind in WNBA history. No directive can erase it. No silence can reduce its importance. No general manager's authority can take away what Caitlin Clark accomplished on the basketball court. But the organization that allegedly attempted to limit the celebration of that moment has now been challenged publicly, not by online critics, analysts, or reporters, but by the two players who were most directly affected. Standing in that hallway with their hands at their sides and refusing the handshake Amber Cox offered, they created an image that now defines the story surrounding the Indiana Fever's 2026 season. And unless ownership responds quickly, clearly, and publicly, it could also become the moment Caitlin Clark begins seriously considering where she wants to continue the next chapter of the most important career in women's basketball history. Caitlin Clark's hands remain at her sides. If you want the full analysis that follows this story from the locker room to the ownership level, you already know what to do. Like, subscribe, turn on that notification bell, and share your thoughts in the comments. Is Amber Cox's future in Indiana over? Does this handshake refusal push Caitlin Clark closer toward demanding a trade? We are following every development, and we will see you in the next one.